guys know that was a lie. I can only kind of speak in English, so please bear with me. My talk this morning, it's about pride. And probably one that you guys haven't really thought of much. We were studying... Wait, hold on to the phone. There we go. We were studying in James. Studying the 3rd chapter about, lying and whatnot, and we found an interesting verse. It was, "My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that you shall receive a stricter judgment." Now, I don't know how many of you knew that was there. I certainly didn't. Once I saw it, I thought about saying to Paul, "I cannot do this, it's too dangerous." But anyway, so I have a New King James Version. That's what it says, the teachers. The other one's just regular King James says masters. And we looked it up, the Greek word is teachers. And we started to wonder why on earth that would be that teachers, would receive a stricter judgment. They do so much good for people, they explain complicated Bible verses and encourage us and entertain us and all these things. So we kind of tried to find out. Besides, the Bible's saying that if you teach others to break the commandments, if you break the commandments and teach others to do likewise, you're a dirty dog. I might be paraphrasing some. We also found out that that if you go over here to 1 Corinthians, let's start at 12. It does not say this: "Each of you says, I'm of Paul, or I'm of Apollos, or I'm of Cephas, or I'm of Christ. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you, or were you baptized in the name of Paul?" Now, Paul was writing to the Corinthians, and apparently they had a problem with, following their favorite preachers instead of the man who wrote the whole book of the Bible. So, Paul was a great guy. Apollos was apparently a great leader in the church. Cephas is Peter, and others said, "I am of Christ," but Paul said all these guys were wrong because you shouldn't be following Apollos or Paul or Peter or even say, "Oh, well, I don't know what you guys are doing. I'm of Christ." So, apparently it's easy to divide up yourselves and for the preachers to say, "Oh, I'm pretty great. These guys should be listening to me. They should be kind of worshiping me a little bit." Well, you might say that I'm not a preacher. This doesn't really apply to me. But if you'll go to 3 John, verse 9, and if you're asking what chapter, you're in the wrong book. It says, "I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have preeminence among them, does not receive us. Therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds, which he does, prattling against us with malicious words, and not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church." Now, apparently this dude was a great leader of the church. It doesn't say that he's a preacher, he's a speaker, or, he travels the world. Apparently he was an important member of the community and represented the church. And he thought that he was so great that he would not even allow people to see him in his house and would throw them out of the church for that. Now, most of you, if you go up to my cabin up there and say, "Hey, man, can I come visit with you?" my first reaction will not be to sprint to the door and try to lock it. But this guy, he just had his priorities wrong. He thought he was so great that they should be worshiping him and bowing down. How dare they try to see him in his own house? I thought it was interesting, though, Paul was the one who told the Corinthians not to follow him. He didn't think he was great like Diotrephes here did. And I started to wonder why that was, why it was Paul that said, "Man, I'm not that great." But I think I found out. If you'll go over to 2 Corinthians 12, it says that Paul was caught up to heaven, that he got to see heaven while he was still alive, one of the only people ever to get to do that. And he came back down, and then bad stuff started happening. It says, "Unless I should be exalted," verse 7, sorry, I didn't say that. "Unless I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Paul, he didn't think he was great because God saw fit to remind him how human he was. We don't know what it was. I mean, I've heard speculation, but it doesn't say for certain what this thorn in the flesh was. But Paul was cut down, and he said, you know what, that's okay. It reminds me that I'm not the greatest guy on earth. That's why he wrote to the Corinthians to tell them that was wrong. He knew that it was not about him, it was about God. Apollos didn't write, Peter didn't write. Both were great men, but they weren't the ones that said, hey, stop that. If you'll turn with me over to Proverbs, I mean, I'm sure you all heard this. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16, sorry. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and a one who sows discord among the brethren. Now those are all horrible things. But pride beats out murder and lies for the top spot. I mean, that's got to be some kind of evil Olympic medal or something. I mean, it beats out murder. But you know, it can be worse, because pride can cause you to spiritually murder people. The Diotrephes in James, he was throwing people out of the church because they were trying to see him. He was proud, and so he was keeping them out of the church, keeping them from being closer to God, just because he thought that he was so great. And that's why I feel like Paul knew that he wasn't so great. He was incapable of pride because he was reminded about how stupid he was constantly by God. It's very hard, I'm not going to lean on that either. It's very hard to feel proud when you have a thorn in the flesh. I don't know how many of you had a thorn in the flesh, but I have had a literal thorn in my flesh before, and not never, like a spiritual one or anything, but I remember, I don't know how many of you know what hedge apple trees are, but if you don't ever get one because they're evil things. I was mowing my grandma's lawn, and she has many hedge apple trees, and I was down visiting her, just thought it'd be a nice thing to do. So I was pushing my mower along, had my flip-flops on, and the thorn was about that long. And I stepped, I don't know how, it must have been standing straight up from the ground for me to step on it. And it felt like it went all the way through my foot. And so, I said, I hand the mower off to Logan. Had to quit. And there was, I started to hobble up to the house, but it was kind of far. So there was a swing, like a porch swing hanging from a tree right there. And I sat down on it. What I had not known was that this past winter that tree had frozen and died. And the church swing would no longer support my weight. So when I sat down, I heard this crack, and I fell on the ground, and I thought, oh no, what's happened? And then the whole branch that had been attached to came to hit me on the head. And while I was kind of staggering around trying to get up, I waved to Logan and said, help me! Help! And of course, he ran over and helped me up into the house. But it was very hard to feel proud at that moment for my thorn in the flesh. So, maybe if something bad happens to you, don't always think of it as some horrible thing that's getting me down. I mean, maybe it is, but maybe it's God sending you something to keep you on the path and keep you doing the right thing. And that's all I want to say. So thank you guys.